Lorena Seidel, welcome to the Mom Existence.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad to be here. It's a pleasure to be with you and your community.
Amazing. So I came across you when I like to, when I'm doing work, listen to like podcasts or go on YouTube and listen to experts and things like that, just to kind of try and work while I learn. And I remember always seeing the masterclass ads on social media and like through YouTube. And then decided one day, like, okay, maybe I'll just subscribe to that because that is such a good way to learn and hear from entrepreneurs, experts, celebrities, all these people. And that's how I found you. You were on the growth mindset or the power of mindset, which is really about growth mindset as a speaker. So, how did you get to do that and get involved with that? Because it's a huge series.
Yes, that was the biggest, most fun thing I've ever done. So very lucky to be invited to participate in that class. And I'm super proud that I was part of that project. And it was a dream come true moment for me because I loved Carol Dweck's work and I have studied her for the past couple of decades. And I was just a big fan, so I was super starstruck when I got to meet her, and I worked with David Yeager, who's also in the master class. He was her, mentee, and he worked with her doing her research at Stanford University for, I think, like, maybe about a decade, and he was her student, and they worked closely for a long time. And he was writing his book that came out last year. It's called the science. It's called 10 to 25: The Science of Motivating Young People. And that it was an incredible book. And he interviewed me for the book many years ago. So I think maybe like 2021. And then we worked on the book um, together for a little bit, and then I didn't really hear much from him because he was putting the book together. And then when the book was coming out, he had this opportunity to do the master class with Carol Dweck, and I guess they saw some of the interviews he did with me for the book, and they read the chapter that he wrote about me in his book. And then all of a sudden, MasterClass is contacting me and asking me to be a guest and help out in that episode. So it was just a super, super cool project. And I felt like I worked for, a decade and a half. And then it finally kind of culminated into like, oh my gosh, this top psychologist, because David Yeager's this like superstar psychologist, like probably the top in the world right now. I was like, to be recognized by someone like him and then by
Amazing.
someone like Carol, it was just so, so fun.
That's amazing. And you'll forever be involved kind of in that community and have that live on forever, which is so exciting.
Yes, it's like I'm forever a masterclass instructor now,
I
which is
love
really cool.
that. So, what really struck me, and I think a lot of parents or moms who are listening can relate to the struggles with being a parent and trying to deal with what you're thinking and what you're feeling and how to kind of regulate your emotions. And it's a real challenge. And I know your background is you were a Montessori teacher. Is that correct?
A Montessori teacher, that's how I started out
Amazing.
20 years ago. That was my training. I studied education, and that was my first job right off the bat. I was 21, and I
Oh,
started
wow.
teaching at this really wonderful Montessori school here in Connecticut called the Whitby School. It was the first American Montessori school and the birthplace for the American Montessori Society. So I felt like I learned from the best of the best teachers, and that was my background originally.
And did you find because you had that background and that education and experience, then when you had your own children, instead of working with other children and teaching them, like what did you find those worlds colliding interesting? Because it would obviously be completely different when they're in your home and you're trying to teach them or struggle with kind of communication within your own family.
Yes, no, it was interesting because I was overly confident about being a mom. I thought, how hard can this be?
Yeah,
Why is it
I got this.
about? And of course, I'm going to be great because I have all this, the theory. I've studied all of this. I have been in the classroom for, I guess, at the time I had my first, it was already like 6, 7 years in the classroom. So I felt like it was going to be a breeze. And then
Nope.
reality hit me and humbled me pretty quickly. And I had the first two very close together. I have three children, but the first two, they were 18 months apart.
Wow.
And the first baby was an easy baby, you can say. But with two very close together, all of a sudden, I started to get hit with all the demands of parenting, of having a newborn and sleep deprived, and nursing the new baby, plus that 18-month, now almost 2-year old wanting to now defy and say no and have tantrums, starting to hurt the baby.
Mm,
And all of a sudden, I realized that I I was gonna need some help. I was becoming my own mother, and I'd been raised in Brazil in a very emotionally unintelligent family with a very scary, angry mom. I love them, but they were doing their best with what they had, but it was rough. And of course, when I had my own kids, drove. I remember my husband driving 15 miles an hour from the hospital with that new baby, and me sitting in the back seat. And we have the most precious cargo with us, and so
absolutely.
much love and reverence for that baby, and vowing to be a really good mom. And then not even 2 years later, there I was raising my voice and sounding like my mom, and all of a sudden it hit me that how did I get here from, like, 2 years ago being so in love and wanting to be the best mom to now replicating some of the same things my parents did, and all of a sudden just not feeling good. Feeling like, "This is not the mom I wanna be. This is not the mom my kids deserve." And that was for me the moment I it all came kinda crashing down, and I realized I needed to do something, and I needed to reprogram. I was programmed to be a bad mom. I had,
Hmm.
inherited a lot of patterns and a lot of negative, and limiting beliefs and all the things that were really causing me to lose my cool quite a bit.
It's so true because we can just continue on doing something because we saw that and that's how we were raised. And then also the emotional anger kind of like natural reactions take over at times too because I don't want to say my son's just over 2, so he is at that age where he's testing and typical toddler feelings and emotions, but I have to be very cautious not to raise my voice because like he's very into hitting right now for no reason. And if I kind of give a reaction, he starts laughing, like laughing hard. So it's hard to, as the parent, understand that they just want reactions out of us and we need to give them more conversation or we need to express more feelings, I guess. Like that's what I try and do is pull away and say like that hurts, mommy, and I don't like that. But I can understand how people could just fly off the handle because you're like mad at the situation, you might be tired or you're in a rush and you just emotionally break down. But the child doesn't really know. Like certainly they know what's wrong and what's right, but like they don't really know why you're reacting that way. I think they're just looking for a reaction, right?
Yeah, and guidance, and they just don't know better, right? They're so brand new to the world. We forget that they don't know how to navigate, uh, all the ins and outs of life yet.
Mhm.
And yeah, so they need so much. And we sometimes we have the best intentions, but just not the best mindset, or maybe not the best strategies, or not the best skills. And we're sort of unequipped. So there's a little learning curve there.
Mhm. And it is work. I think even when people don't really agree, let's say with sleep training, um, it's like, well, you have to kind of teach them. There's different ways you can be very gentle, and it can be a great process for everyone. And you also have to teach them how to walk and how to potty train them. There's all these things that you need to teach them. So emotionally teaching them, but also you're kind of teaching yourself too how to deal with their emotions, which I think is the hardest part. After
Yeah.
so when you said you kind of came to a point that you were struggling because you had your newborn, your toddler, and you weren't really being an example of what you wanted to be in those moments. So what did you do to kind of break through that and change your mindset and get through those really hard days?
Oh, wow. Yes, I've tried everything.
You
Everything
kind of
that
have to.
yes, throw everything at it, and, we are trialing and erroring, and, of course, I had a lot of knowledge, and my master's I had written a master thesis, for, social-emotional intelligence, and I went back to my research. I was like, "Let me," because it's different when you read and you study, just for yourself, but then when you are actually living this in the practical part of it and you go back. And then what I realize is that, okay, studying positive discipline, end up becoming certified in that. I was learning to meditate, do yoga, anything, whatever like someone would say, if you want to be a calm mom, you should try this. I've done it.
Mhm.
Oh, you should try Waldorf education, more walks in nature, baking breads, like all the things like to be a calm mom. I've tried and went deep into it. I didn't just like, "Oh, let me try it out." Like, I end up becoming a, mindfulness-based stress reduction teacher. Like, I went all the way. I was like, "I'm not gonna
You
just
did.
learn this. I'm gonna really learn this." Then dove into positive discipline, became certified in that, and then later certified to teach teachers. And
Mhm.
everything I went all the way in, but I was still struggling. And I was like, there's gotta be something else because all these things, they're good, they're helpful, they won't hurt, but they weren't cracking the code. I wasn't, really transformed. And what I realized is that in the heat of the moment, I just couldn't even access these better strategies. I knew what I
Mm.
should be doing. I've had read the books. Even if I had a printout on my refrigerator, I couldn't access that in the heat of the moment. Everything would go out the window. You just cannot access those, great
Mm.
strategies that you have. And you end up resorting to that primal responses, right?
Mm.
The fight and flight, the gut reactions, right? And you go back to that primitive part of our brain. So I realized that, even if I really wanted, it wasn't a matter of willpower and it wasn't a matter of just having better strategies. I needed to figure it out. How do I access this in the heat of the moment? How do I
Mhm.
interact? And how do I rewire myself so I can break through these patterns I've inherited of reactivity, of controlling, of anger responses, right? And that's when I dove deep into the growth mindset work. I realized that, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to find a way or make a way, but I'm not going to be, this mom. I'm going to be a good mom. And when I started to work on my, just my mental models and the way I thought, and I started changing that, that's when I saw the biggest results, and it happened much faster.
Well, and people, I think, like you said, you can have the resources, you can do the courses, you can read the books, listen to the podcast, but in the heat of the moment, when you're upset or you're just not prepared, like sometimes I know at bedtime, I go in prepared to know it's going to take time and know there's going to be boundaries that I need to set. But if you're tired and you're just not thinking about it and you go into it and you're not ready or prepared for what you may encounter because you just never know, then it's so easy to feel. I can just feel my blood start to boil, let's say. Like, you know what I mean? You can go from 0 to 100 so quickly. And also, I think that a lot of us beat ourselves up with what we do consume in terms of content or things on social media because we see how other people are doing it or things that may have worked for someone else. And it looks like it's all good and fine and they've got it figured out. And you're wondering what's wrong with me or what's wrong with my child and why am I a bad parent? And I think that it's hard to mentally acknowledge that things are going to be messed up and things are going to happen, the way your toddler wants them, not the way that you want them. And that can be hard. But what would you recommend, I guess, for regular old moms and parents that aren't researched like you and don't have your background if they're trying to break some behaviors or make new healthy patterns for themselves to deal with discomfort or situations that they don't like being in with their child? Like, what can they do kind of just at a very easy, low level to disarm a situation?
Yes, I think it's just taking a different approach to parenting, right? In shifting completely the way we face parenting from not, you know, you don't have to react the right way every time. You don't have to react the right way the first
Mm.
time. What I kind of try to double down and I talk to parents and I start to help them is that at first, you just need to do it over, right? Practicing this,
Like in that
new.
moment or when it happens again?
So you have to take the moment and use it to practice the better skills that you are lacking or that your child is lacking, the better mindset that you need or that your child may need in that moment, or to practice repairing the relationship. So, the best example I can give you is that when this started to work for me, when it clicked for me. So I had that moment when my oldest was about 2 when I realized I needed to do something different. Now I'm into this active, you know, working on myself for a couple of years. So now she's like 4, 4.5. We got ourselves a bunny. They wanted a pet. I already had all 3 kids at this point
Why
because
not
they
throw a
were all
bunny in there?
a half. And I had this incident, which it has changed everything for me. 3, 4 days after we got this bunny, I walked into the living room and she was holding this bunny by the back legs and
Oh,
shaking it up now.
yeah.
And in that moment, in 20 seconds, I did all the things that I tell parents not to do. I started with the shaming and the blaming. What are you
Mm,
doing? Why are you doing this? This is so mean. I threatened to give the bunny to another family with nicer little girls. I then sent her away because I can't even look at you right now. Just go to your room, right?
mm,
And in that moment, I was like, "Oh, Lorena, here you go again. You know better." Like, when you think about that interaction, that 20-second interaction, and you realize I have taught her nothing right now. There's
right.
no skills that I'm building for her. And am I role modeling any of the things I want her to have when I think of her as a grown adult, right? When I think of her as a 25-year-old woman coming home for Thanksgiving dinner, I want her to be, kind and patient and
Mhm,
confident and emotionally stable and good thinker, a good problem solver, a great communicator, all these things I want for her. I realize I'm not teaching any of that and I am not being it. Am I being a good communicator if I'm raising my voice? Am I being emotionally stable and I'm losing my cool? No. Am I being kind and empathetic? No, I'm not teaching these things and I'm not being these things. And what kind of dynamic am I fostering with her for life?
mhm.
It's one of when you make a mistake, I'm going to criticize and judge you and I can't even deal with you, right? Like that's the
Yeah.
the dynamic I'm putting in place. And everything that we do is habit building, right? Like
Mhm,
whatever we start to do and say and the ways we interact become the new habits and the new patterns of interaction. So I realize, okay, this is not good.
mm,
Not helpful, doesn't feel good. For me, it doesn't feel good for her. And that was when I was like, Lorena, you need the timeout. So you take the time out to get yourself into a better state of mind, because we know that nothing good is going to come out of you being in a triggered, stressed, angry, in that, you know, primitive brain. So
Mhm.
you need to be in a good state of mind. That's step number one that I realize. I need to get myself in a good state. And what did I do? I gave myself that time out and I started to think about, children do that.
Mhm.
She's only 4.5. They are clueless.
Yeah.
They pull the dog's tail. They do things like that.
Mhm.
She's only had stuffed animal up to this point that she could throw up and down. I didn't take a lot of time for training with her. Then I remember a time when I was a kid and I mishandled some kittens once. So I realized that, you know what, let me call her back and let's do a take two. I'm gonna do this over, right? Because if I just leave it at that, yeah, we'll be fine. In 20 minutes, everything is okay. And we push this over under the rug and we move on like nothing happened. Or maybe I profusely apologize, but then go back to do that same thing again later on, right? And I realized, no more of that. We're going to do differently. And I called her back. I looked at her in the eye. I got down to her level. I touched her shoulder. And I said, when mommy was little, I mishandled some kittens once. And right there, I saw the spark in her eye, the way lifting off her shoulder. She's like, "Oh, Mommy, I'm not mean." I said,
Mhm.
"No, you're not mean. You did something mean, but you're not mean." And then I went on to, what can we do with this bunny? I was like, we're going to brainstorm some solutions here. And she very quickly, she said, I can feed the bunny. I can help you clean the cage. I can take the bunny outside. I can pet the bunny on my lap and on and on. I'm like, yes, great. And then I apologized for the way I spoke to her and asked her to please forgive me. So, right there, this do over, this take two, where I gave myself the time out. I found a better state of mind. In this better state of mind, I was able to access the better strategies. I was able to relate, to connect with her, to validate. I was able to brainstorm solutions, invite her to think and problem solve. I was able to communicate in a
Mhm.
beautiful way. I was able to apologize and repair. Now, all of a sudden, you realize, oh, now she's learning the skills I want her to develop. Now I'm modeling the skills myself. And now what dynamic am I fostering for life with her? Oh, one where we sort things out together. We can find solutions. When we mess up, we can repair, right? Like
Mhm.
that's what I wanted long term. And that was the day that I realized I can tap into this. I can do this every time.
Right.
And then as I practiced that, I started to become really good. And then this started to become second nature, right? It started to become the automatic response. And that was when I was able to make it stick. I was like, okay, I can make this sustainable. Now this just is the way I respond. It became a new habit for me. So but it has these four steps, right? That being in a better state of mind, then being able to access those better strategies, being able to connect or reconnect or repair connection, right? And then teach the skills that she needs. So this is not a problem next time. And the
Mhm.
skills that I need so I don't react this way the next time. And then when you put these four steps together, boom, that's where the
It
magic is.
works. Oh, thank you for sharing that. That's such a nice story. And I think a lot of people can relate to that exact scenario of just things escalating. And obviously when there's an animal or maybe it's a sibling or something involved, then your immediate reaction is going to be that, right? So what I think that people underestimate the power of communication and apologies. I think to children in general. Wouldn't you agree? And do you think it matters how old the child is? If they're 1, if they're 4, if they're 10, that you could put some of those practices into place? Like, is there an age limit that maybe it would just not work? Or you can kind of start to develop those skills, that mindset, that communication from really early on?
I would say from right off the bat, I always think parents have this, like, it's like a mystery, the parent-child
It sure
relationship.
is.
Or and then I say it's so much easier than we think. What I found out is that the parent-child relationship is very similar to any other relationship. So everything um, that your communication or interactions would do to a friendship or to a marriage, right? It will do to your child, to your parent-child relationship. So um, people ask me, for how long do I need to work on this? The
Forever.
parenting, the parent.
Forever.
It's like, forever, for as long as you want to have a good one.
Yeah.
How long do you need to work on your marriages? For as long
Mhm.
as you want to have a good marriage, right? And what does yelling do to your marriage? What does shaming and blaming do to your relationship, your romantic relationship? Or what
Right.
does, punishment or bribing or threatening would do to your friendships, right? If you and I are friends and I am threatening you or yelling at you or shaming or blaming or punishing you, this friendship's not going to last very long, right?
Mhm.
If I say that my partner is doing that to me, you would think, "Oh, she's not in a great relationship. It's not healthy," right?
Yeah, no, totally.
So these things will do to the parent-child relationship the same thing these things would do to a friendship or a relationship. It will damage, right? It will create the little seeds of resentment, of miscommunication, of mistrust, and eventually you could deteriorate the relationship enough that, you won't have that relationship. What is tricky about the parent-child relationship is that our children don't have the option, right?
Mm.
We're stuck with each other.
Mhm.
Every other relationship, if you are in a unhealthy work dynamic, you could find a new job. If you are in a bad romantic relationship, you could end that relationship.
Right.
If you have a friend that's not treating you well, you could choose a better friend. But we are stuck with our kids and our kids are stuck with us, right? That's why this is so important, is that this is the one relationship we cannot afford to not work on. We have to make sure we find a way or make a way. Um, and when you ask me when to start these authentic, communication, I would say right off the bat, um, you know, with repairing, apologizing, whatever it takes to foster this really healthy habits of relationship from the get go.
Mhm. Okay, good. I try. Again, the hitting is hard, I find, because that's just an emotional outburst, but when we yell or get angry or communicate the way we're not proud of with our child, the last thing that you want to do, I think if they're teenagers or 3 years old, is to hurt their feelings. And at least I don't. And I don't want to make them feel bad because I can remember being a young kid or a teenager and getting in some type of argument or disagreement, mostly with my mom. You know how daughters are with their moms, and storming off to my room, and or I got sent there, but there was never, and my parents are amazing, but there was never really a lot of communication after or repair, or if it was something very um, kind of traditional, I would say. And when I grew up in the 80s and 90s was like, you shouldn't have done that. Like, don't do that next time or whatever. You know what I mean? Because I think that the communication was different, or maybe not everyone had the skills, like I'm generalizing, to figure out how to communicate and make things better. Because like you said, as adults, that has probably shaped a lot of us. And I'm sure there are much more traumatic experiences kids have had that carry that with them, that anger or that style of communication into relationships, into work, into friendships, and it's not healthy. So it's so obviously you're a professional at this, but it's so amazing that your kids are going to understand that and be able to treat their peers and colleagues with respect. Like it's like a team. A family is a team. So if they're able to help a team member or a friend, whatever it is, they're going to know how to do that because you've modeled that. And I think that is so incredible. And obviously that's a lot of the work that you do is empowering parents to be able to do that for themselves and then teach their children that. And then it should just keep compounding.
Yes, and it's a few things that come to my mind when you say that. One is that, like you said, maybe our parents, our teachers, they didn't know better, right? We didn't have emotional intelligence in school. Our coaches, teachers, parents, they perhaps didn't have that. And now we do. And in the
Hmm.
past couple of decades, we understand so much of how the brain works and how, you know, relationship work. Now we almost have that duty of, we know better. We have to do better. Our parents also felt like they wouldn't apologize. They wanted to save face. They felt like they would lose respect if they
Right.
apologized. Right? Like now we
Because
know
their
that.
parents probably did that same, you know what I mean? Like they just took
Yes.
that and kind of, I don't want to say
Yeah.
like diminished or belittled kids, but kind of it was like that authoritarian type of structure, I guess, that they implemented. And now we're kind of questioning that.
Yes, it was just a very different parent-child dynamic. And for us, we already feel like because we apologize to our kids, we're taking a step forward, right?
Mm,
But now what I have been seeing is a lot of we're getting into this other unhealthy, toxic pattern of just profusely apologizing to our kids, but then yelling again, right? And still
mm,
making the same mistake because we're still stuck not knowing how to break out of these patterns and how to break through. So that's, one thing for us to avoid that trap. And then also, I feel like now we have this, we're trying so hard to be good moms, and God forbid we yell at our kids,
mm.
right? And we're becoming very permissive, right? Very soft. And that comes
Gentle
with its
parenting.
own new set of challenges because we end up losing our cool because we're being way too nice, right? We take it and we let them get away with it. We look the other way until we have enough and we lay down the law. Then we're too strict, too rough, right?
Mm,
So that dance of like we're too nice and then we lay down the law, we become too nasty. I call it the nice and nasty dance. That plays a big role. And then, then we see that, oh, okay, now we understand that these interactions are going to have lifelong impact in my kids. We know that we spend a lot of our adult lives just trying to sort it out the emotional damage of the first decade and a half. And that damage was caused within the family structure, right? We go to therapy, we're still talking about mom and dad issue and that kid that bullied us
100%.
in middle school or our sibling that bullied us, right? So now we are so aware of all these things that parents find themselves in this very tricky place of freezing a little bit and stuck like, I cannot yell. Then now I'm becoming too permissive. The
Mhm.
permissiveness on its own is going to cause a whole other slew of problems for me. And nobody seemed to know, like, how do I strike a balance? And then thinking that there is a balance is a big problem that I found out with parents is that they're trying to balance the two, right? I don't want to be too
Right here,
authoritarian.
Lorena. That is me. I feel like I am trying to figure that dance out and it doesn't really work.
No, no, and they come to me like, "I'm trying gentle parent, I'm trying positive parent, I'm trying nothing is working. They only listen when I yell." And I say, and that is right because we have trained our kids to only listen to us when we yell.
Mm,
They know that we don't mean it. We say, "Let's go. We're leaving. We're gonna be late. Get your shoes on. I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna leave without you." We threaten. We do all the things, and in the end, we roar and say, "Get in the car." And in think 30 seconds, they get in the car, and we are left with that belief that
that
it
worked.
works when
Right.
right? And we leave the children trained now to only listen to us when
Mm,
we yell.
mhm.
They know that we're like, oh, mommy's not even mad yet. She hasn't even yelled yet. I'm gonna wait. And then so that we're trying to strike that balance, but it's not about finding the balance. The balance would be, and I mentioned this at the master class, at the classy master class, that balance would be I'm gonna be really nice for an hour, and then I'm gonna be really nasty for an hour, and that's balanced.
Mm,
But that's bad parenting, right? That's
yeah.
toxic. That is harmful parenting. What we want is to be both very kind and both very firm at the same time all the time.
Mhm.
So it's not about dancing and finding the balance, it's finding that sweet spot where you can be both. You can have really high standards but really high support so they can meet those standards. And that's that mentor mindset that David Yeager talked so much in his book. Um, that is the secret. When you strike that, then you're golden.
So let's, for the sake of this podcast and me being selfish, wanting to learn from you in this moment, let's give everyone an example. And again, every situation can be different based on the parent, the child, whatever. But recently, my son is obsessed. Again, he's just 2 and a little bit with wanting to play in our car. So he gets out of his car seat, or he tries as soon as I unbuckle him, he wants to try and go. I have an SUV like over the front into the driver's seat. Or when I take him out of his car seat and I put him on the ground, he walks to one of the doors on the front of either side and he says, play. His favorite thing is 10 minutes. Like everything is like, do that 10 minutes. So he's like, drive up there 10 minutes, 10 minutes. And sometimes I do. I'm like, you know what? Whatever. If it brings him joy for 10 minutes, he can go in there, the car is off, everything's safe, and just pretend to drive, look out the window and kind of laugh and play. But then it comes very habitual. And it's like we go to a coffee shop or I pick him up from daycare and he wants to do that. And it's like, okay, I don't mind if you do it the odd time, but we don't have time to do this every single time you get in and out of daddy's truck or mommy's car. So I find I've effed up in this scenario of not caring and letting him do it because he enjoys it. And then mommy's saying, no, we're not doing that because I need to teach him we can't do this every single time. So that's just an example of, what I'm dealing with, but I'm sure
Right.
other parents are dealing with something similar. So like, what am I doing wrong? Like how I don't want to do that balance because it's not sustainable and I never know what will happen. Like I have to I'm not being mean, but I have to take something away from him that he thinks he's allowed to have or something he's allowed to do. So what's your advice? Help me.
Yeah. How do you react? So how does this escalate to when you say, no, we don't have time to do this today. We are going into the grocery store. Then what does he do?
So
Does he cry?
he
A
does. Yeah, he
meltdown?
does. I don't yell. I try and just I lock the door because I don't know. He'll try and figure out how to get in there. And we live in a building. So the other day I kind of squatted down. I try and do that so we can see eye to eye. We're still about 10, 15 feet away. And I'm just talking to him. Like, I know it's fun. It's really fun to play and see the steering wheel, but we have to go because blah, blah, blah. And maybe later we can play with your trucks. Like I try and just change his thinking pattern. I don't know if that's good or not. And then eventually something I'll say or something I'll say we can do gets him distracted enough to walk over to me and then we go off. But again, this is like a good 5 to 10 minute process sometimes, right?
5 to 10 minute process, yes. And what are you doing is it's great. You're a sweet, loving mom, and you've already recognized I started a pattern here that I don't really want to sustain, which is a great first one of the initial questions to ask ourselves. Whatever it is that we are doing, we need to ask ourselves, do I want to do this every time? Right?
No.
When first time that we maybe let our kids come into our bed in the middle of the night. Do I want to do this every night?
Mm-hmm.
The first time that we cook 2, 3 different dinners because they didn't like the first thing we cooked, and then the second thing, and now we are catering to them and bending backwards to please. The first time that they asked for the blue cup instead of the yellow
Yeah.
cup, and then we gave it to them. Every time that we do these things, we need to ask ourselves, do I want to do this every single time? Right? And if you
Probably
don't,
not.
then okay, we need to come up with a mutual understanding here. And I need to hold a high standard here and give high support, right? So in this situation that you already set a pattern in place, you might have to have that conversation of validating like you did. I see how fun it is. You like to do that. I enjoy it once in a while, but I don't want to do it every time. So really with very much confidence, just telling him not, not this moment and coming up with when would you be okay with that? Maybe it's when you come home, maybe it's once in a while, but he needs to have it very clear that the standard is, most of the time we arrive at the doctors and we go in. We go to the market, we go in. We don't do this every time. And you can come up with something that you can live with. And that's, maybe on the weekend, maybe when mommy doesn't have anything else to do. But explaining that, but in a very clear, like we just go.
Mhm.
And tapping into the confidence that first, a few different things. The mindset for you that, okay, this is something, it's a learning process, right? And it's okay that it maybe takes a little bit of time. Just like when our kids are learning math or reading, we know that, they're going to need some help. They're going to learn to road count and build some numeracy skills. Eventually, they're going to be doing calculus, but we're not expecting a 4-year-old to know calculus.
Mhm.
We know that this is going to take a decade, right? And when they are learning to read and they get a word wrong, we slow down, we do it again, right? We If they need a tutor, they will get that support for them. And when it comes to behavioral and social emotional skills, we want it yesterday. They should
Mhm.
know better. He's too old for this. What's wrong with him, right? Like we're just expecting our kids to have the skills. So changing our mindset to this is a process, a learning process, and it's unrealistic for me to expect that they will have these skills to be able to navigate this frustrating situation and that they won't melt down or have a reaction, right? So for us to expect that they're going to beautifully navigate things isn't realistic. So we adjust our mindset. Then we connect with them. And because he's so little, right? It's like
Mhm.
you do, it's already really nice. You connect with him. We're going to redirect him into something else that you guys are going to do together that's fun. So tapping into that. Um, but you also want to think that in that moment, if he's frustrated and having a tantrum, sometimes we're trying to negotiate with them, communicate and convince them and coach them. And that's not the time.
No,
What
it's
they
not going in
the
there.
little Yeah, we are not making a lot of headway because imagine that he's drowning. If he was drowning, if our kids are drowning, I'm never gonna run into the pool or into the ocean and start to tell my child, oh, it's very easy. Here's what you do. You're gonna do this,
No.
pump your legs, kick your legs, kick
Mhm.
your legs. I'll teach you how to swim. We wouldn't That's not the time to teach them how to swim, right? We will rescue the child,
Mhm.
and then we make that mental note that before they get in the pool again, before they go in the ocean, they need swimming lessons, right? And we wouldn't let them again get back in the water without guiding them,
Right.
without giving them the skills. So that's the mindset we need to have, is that, we in the heat of the moment, it's already too late,
Mhm.
right? We need to remember that the these practices need to happen in between incidents. It's in between this meltdown and the next meltdown that we know it's bound to happen in a few days, right? It's in
Mhm.
between this sibling fight and the next bickering match. It's in between this bedtime hassle and tomorrow's bedtime hassle. We got to do something because, and the way I explain to the children when I work with them is that, like, you go to soccer and you have maybe one or two practice during the week, and then you have a game on the weekend or a game every few weeks. When it's game time, it's too late to practice. When you're
Right.
playing the game, you can't just stop everything and say, coach, everyone watching, my teammates, I just need 5 minutes here. I got to kick the ball a few times. I got to practice my dribble, or I need to shoot some hoops. We can do that, right? Like it's game time. Either we do well or we don't. We score or we don't score, but it's too late to practice. But we need to have those practices in between games. And that's what parents forget. They they deal with the problem right now in whatever way, and then they wait for it to happen again, but they are no better skilled and the kids are no better skilled, so they are doomed to deal with the same problems again and again. right? So what I would always advise is that you role play with him. So
Mm,
because he's little, you say, you know what? I want to practice with you. When we get someplace, what do we do? Well, I'm going to
right.
unbuckle you. Then we're going to hop out. We're going to hold hands. You're going to close the door. And then we're going to walk into the place, walk back. And then let's practice that. On Saturday mornings, we'll play the driving thing in the car, on the driveway, at home. And you start practicing that you just say, let's role
Right.
play this. So make it a habit of him practice just getting out and going into the store. But talk to him honestly, we're going to practice this.
Yeah, and like not even
Um,
in this situation, you could be at home and talking about it.
yeah. And
I
you can just practice. And you could even say, we're going to go out to the market right now. Let's practice that
mm,
skill that we are
okay.
talking about.
I like that. I do try and find time to if there's been like an outburst, he's getting his diaper changed, doesn't want to, and there's like a hitting, and I'm trying to do it. There's no point in me trying to explain why hitting is terrible in that moment. So sometimes when I'm reading to him before bed or getting his jammies on or in the tub when he's calm, because this is again what I've read, when he's calm and like you said, when they can actually absorb information and they're not having a meltdown, I do try and talk about it. So I guess that's helpful with some of that stuff, but trying the role playing or his visualization of a scenario when we're not, because I don't really talk about the car thing. I just talk about the hitting thing, about how last night I said to him, he was laying in his crib and I was reading to him and I was talking about, remember when you hit mommy today? It really hurt my feelings and it hurt. You stubbed your toe earlier and sometimes you bump your head and you cry and that makes you really sad, doesn't it? And he was like, like, I know that even though he's two, like he is understanding what I'm saying. And it doesn't mean that he's not going to hit me again or have a meltdown of the car, but hopefully talking about that or understanding what we do and what is, you know, hurtful to him or me is going to diminish some of the scenarios. You know what I mean? Like they're still going to happen, or how we get out of the scenario, I guess is what I'm trying to say, could be like a little smoother, but I'm going to stand by my guns and continue, even though I feel crazy and I don't feel bothered by it, but other people might be listening to me outside the coffee shop. Like, why is this girl talking to her child? Like, you know what I mean? When you're saying, um, we're not going to do this, we're going to do that, because I really do communicate heavily with him. We could be at the grocery store and I'm explaining everything to him about what we're going to do for supper and how we're going to do this and what we're going to do after. So I think it's just practicing and standing by what you're saying and not giving in, because I think that's where that balance can just blow up, right? Like if you say you're not going to go in the car or you're not going to do this and then mommy lets you do it, then of course they're going to throw a fit and want to do it again because you let them after they threw the fit.
Yes, that's the thing. We sometimes reinforce that behavior, right? If they go to the store and they ask for sweets and we say, no, we're not going to have any sugar. It's almost dinner time. We just came here for two things, blah, blah, blah. And they escalate, but I want it. And now you're mortified. They are throwing themselves. And eventually you say
You give
no a few
in.
times. Then you are like, okay, you can have it this one time, but you're not going to get dessert tonight. And I'm never bringing you to the market again with me. Okay, it still worked.
Mm-hmm.
This child just now learned that, and if I escalate a little bit, if I pest it a few more times, if I start crying, if eventually I throw myself, I'll get it. So what we just did is we just reinforced that that behavior was helpful, that that works, because he feels like, yeah, that worked for me. I still got my candy. It doesn't matter if we still threaten them, get mad at them. It has worked. And now they are that much more likely to do this the next time we go to the store. So that's one thing. Another point for him, because he's two, a lot of the times we want to act more. Try, and I know that we want to talk to them and explain things to them, and it is so good and enriching for their vocabulary and all of that. It's going to be great. But sometimes you want to just activate his mirror neurons, those monkey see, monkey do neurons.
Okay.
I see parents sometimes trying to negotiate and talk and convince their kids so much. And I say, if you want them to put their shoes on, just take your shoes on and then you sit in front of them and start putting your shoes on
Mm.
and then hand them their shoes and those mirror neurons activate. You put your coat on and say, I'm putting my coat on. Here's your coat. And then I'm going to brush my teeth. Here's your toothbrush. And you do it together because with young child, you just want to use those mirror neurons in your advantage and get those mirror neurons kicking in. Another really quick strategy for little ones, you want to often if he's hitting you, you might say, stop hitting me or don't hit me, right? Or don't hit your sister or don't do that. And every time, have you ever told him not to hit?
Yeah, like yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday, right? Every time. So I'm going to do a little game with you.
Okay.
I want you to close your eyes for a second
Hmm.
and I'm going to say things to you. I'm going to say, don't run in the parking lot.
Then you
Don't
pictures.
jump in the pool.
Hmm.
Don't hit me. Don't look at the pink elephant. What did you see when I said, don't look at the pink elephant?
You immediately, in all those scenarios, picture exactly what you're saying.
Yes, right?
Hmm.
So every time we tell our little ones, don't do something, we are reinforcing the very thing we don't want them
Mm.
to do because our brain works with images. So they're actually already seeing the running in the parking lot, the jumping in the pool, the hitting mommy, or the pink elephant, right? Like we see it. And we also, what sticks with us is the last thing we hear. So when we say don't hit, we hear hit.
Mm.
Don't run, we hear run, right? So try to tell him exactly what you want. Oh, I want you to massage my shoulder, or I would love for you
Mm.
to pet my hair. I would love for you to hold my hand and caress my hand when we're reading, and give him exactly that picture of what would feel really good when you guys are reading together.
Okay, I'm gonna
So
try
with the
that. It just seems to be when he poops and I have to change his bum. Like most of the time he's fine, but he does not like it and he gets angry. It's actually shocking. He can be so pleasant and playing. And I'm like, okay, I tell him 3 or 4 times, it's time to change your bum. I'm going to lay you down. We're going to go in here, like you said, so he knows what's coming. But when I get in that position and I'm doing it, he gets angry. But I think I do try and say something along the lines of, I think I try and say gentle hands, like please use gentle hands with mommy, but I don't know if he even knows what that means right
I know
now.
some of those things, and yeah, they're like, what does that even mean?
Okay, I'm going to try that
But
and I'm going to report back.
yes, tell me how it works. And with potty training, this might be a sign that he wants to be very independent. He might be in that stage where like I
Ooh.
want to do it, me do it,
Yeah, he
sound
is.
like they want to do everything themselves. And it might be behavior is always communication, right? Everything that they say or do is just telling us something. Collect that data and say, I think what you're trying to tell me is that you can help with this process. And you know what? You totally can. You are too. You know what? You pull your pants down for me? Can you get the new diaper or the pull up? Maybe we need, I don't know if he's already on pull ups, but
He
you might
is.
say, I think
Yeah.
graduated to, yeah. So if he's already on pull ups, let him do the entire process himself of taking the dirty pull up and putting it in the garbage, wiping with the baby wipe and show him how to do it and putting it in the garbage. Even if it's like poo, sometimes you probably want him, like you can put the poo in the toilet, like if
Mm-hmm.
it's, nice
Yeah.
consistency, you just put it in the toilet, have him flush it because he's practicing
Mm,
all the steps he needs for potty training, right?
right.
You might say, put your hands down and then you wipe it. So now he's already always standing. Because when you're trying to put a 2-year-old on their backs and
Right.
laying them down and you want to do it for them, it's a war that you're probably not going to win. But if he starts to do it more himself, he's going to feel a little bit more autonomous, a little bit more independent. And
Mm-hmm.
even like the process of cleaning up, if he has accidents, he can clean up. He can go put, wipe things with you. Just invite him to be more of like part of the solution than part of the problem.
Mm.
He's probably going to love that.
I love that because you're right. I do. He's very great, so helpful around the house. Like he wants to help with the garbage and the recycle, put the dishwasher when my husband, because that's really his job. I hate doing the dishwasher, but when he's putting the clean dishes away, Cash runs over and says, me help, me help. And Jeff will give him, appropriate things to pass him and stuff. So he definitely loves helping. And you're right. He is in that me do it, me do it, me do it stage, as most toddlers are. And I do let him, if it's a pee, I take off his pull up and I hand him the wipe and I'm like, do you want to clean yourself? And he'll do it. And he likes that. So I hadn't honestly thought about him helping with the poop situations because I'm just thinking I need to get this off and get it cleaned up. But I'm going to try that because I think that what you're saying, it kind of blew my mind. And you're right. I think that that's could be part of the problem. And we have been talking a lot about the potty and he sits on it the odd time. I'm not pushing it yet, but I want him to be aware of what's to come. So yeah. And you know what? Like this might be too much information for people, but his poops are not always solid. So depending on what he's had, because he just eats so much fruit, but I could visualize that being such an easier process, getting rid of the poop and cleaning up if they were solid. So like, I'll try and have him involved in some capacity to clean up, but it could be a bit messy.
On the floor is so easy because then he's like bent over and you can
but he
wipe.
hates that. Like he clearly hates that, right?
Yeah, even the changing table, if you're still trying to put him on a changing table.
I got rid of that.
Good. I was going to say that's time to get
I usually
mat.
lay him on the playroom mat because it's squishy, it's easy to clean, and I hand him a book or hand him a car or something so that he's in the room he likes to be in. But it's still a struggle.
And then the mindset for you to fight here is that sometimes we tell ourselves, but it's so much easier for me to do it. It's so much faster. It's so much less of a mess and a hassle for me to do it myself. And we get trapped into that. We continue to try to do all the things by ourselves. But on the long term, this is an investment of time where he's helping in the process, but it's going to save you time because he will learn to potty train much sooner. He will be able to be more helpful and you avoid that 10-minute, struggle with him. So always, adjust the mindset for, this is an investment of time.
I love that. And you're right. And I do, again, you do get helpful things on social media sometimes. And that is one of them. I think there's one I often see from different mom creator content people is showing, I saw one the other day, the kid was helping unload the groceries from the cart in the parking lot and putting them in. And they said sometimes things have to be done slower. And that's really the point in you slowing down, the parent slowing down in that situation, because nothing good comes out of you trying to be rushed and get out of it. It's not teaching them anything. So you slowing down, teaching them in turn, like what you just said, is going to teach them so much more going forward.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's all about coaching our kids. If we can use the everyday challenges to coach them, to give them the skills that they need, we very quickly get rid of the problems because there's a direct correlationship between the skill levels and behavior. As the skills go up, the misbehavior goes down, right? If there's sibling fight, it's because they don't know, they don't have the skills, the negotiation, the compassion, the empathy, the communication, the problem solving, the thinking that they need. And what we do is the two of them are fighting over a toy. We take away the toy and we think we solved the problem, but we only solved it for the moment. Yeah, the bickering is over. But tomorrow, when these two children are fighting, they're no better prepared to fight any better. They don't have the skills they need. So we are doomed to have to deal again with this problem tomorrow and the day after. But as we focus on coaching them and building the skills, they get better every day. Within a few days, they are fighting much better. They are negotiating these things on their own. They are, dealing with their potty training much better, or they are doing things for themselves. Bedtime becomes more smoothly. If we just focus on that within a few days, we are like cleaning out all of
Mm.
the hiccups, right? And we're coaching them, equipping them, and then we see those negative behaviors going down super fast.
Oh my gosh. I feel so much excited, so much more excited about so many things from talking to you. So the work that you do is amazing because I already
Yeah.
feel like I feel empowered to take on some of these situations and encounters already. Okay, before we wrap up, Lorena, I want to ask you what advice you can give parents when they are dealing with outside influences that kind of contradict what they're trying to do or in place. Like let's say it's let's just use a general run, a grandparent. Um, because they may not be equipped with some of the tools or the strategies that you've worked on. And they start kind of saying things that aren't helpful and kind of reversing what you're trying to do in place. Like, do you correct them? Like, is that advice for parents or do you kind of just like let them do their thing and try and sort it out later? Because I think a lot of people get in these situations.
Oh, that's a good question. That's a big one. Okay, so a few things to think about. Typically, that conflict will happen where someone doesn't agree with the approach you are trying to implement, right? And that often comes from them they're perceiving us to either be too wishy-washy, too permissive, right? And they feel like we should be firmer, or people will judge us when we are being too firm and we are yelling at our kids in public, right? And they are judging us and thinking we should be more soft and we should be more positive, we should be more gentle, right? So
Mhm.
it's always this duality, right? Like if that we are always facing. So if you are more naturally on the kind side or trying to be a more positive mom, more gentle mom, perhaps because you grew up with a different model and you're trying to course correct and you're breaking decades of conditioning or generational patterns like me, right?
Mhm.
We tend to be more on the soft side and that permissive side. Um, and maybe the mother-in-law is more in that firmer side. And they believe that, you're talking too much, explaining too much, that he should just know that this is not okay.
Mhm.
Like you need to be a little more firm. And what we want to know is that the person on the kind side that leans that way, that's more permissive, already has half of the equation, right? Like they already got that part, the high support. And the person that has that firm side, they got half of the equation too. They got the high standard. And we need both. So we have to look at each other and say, together we can probably find a really good dynamic here because you might be right. I lean towards being too permissive most of the time. And I see you as being a little bit too firm and too strict, too tough, too rough. But you got half of the equation, I got half. Neither one of us got it right yet because you were probably right that I am too permissive. And I need to work on, finding the sweet spot. And and for you, the same. You raised us with a much firmer, hand and a different discipline approach, and you can soften it up. So, because anybody that's working with your child, if it's a family, right, or if it's the nanny, or if it's your co-parent or your, spouse, we are often, one is on the kind side, the other one is on the firm side. And what we tend to do is compensate for the other.
Mm.
Every time I'm too wishy-washy, too permissive, too soft, Andrew would firm it up to compensate for my lack of firmness. Every time I see him being too strict and tough and rough, too much of a disciplinarian, I would feel badly for the girls and soften it up to compensate for his lack of kindness, right? And then we pull each other into different ends of the spectrum. Then our kids get the mixed messages, the inconsistency.
Right.
We step in each other's toes, we undermine each other. So if that's happening to someone that you are comfortable with, and it's someone in your family, it's a mother in law, your mom, right, your partner, I would have the conversation of, I think we both got half of this equation.
Right.
Neither one of us got this quite right yet, but together we can have the household that's kind and firm at the same time all the time. We can hold high standards and give them high support. If it's a stranger, then we don't really care.
No.
But we shouldn't too much. But it's hard, the pressure of parenting in public, right? It's almost like we want to fit in still. We want people to approve the way we are parenting. We're worried that they think we're not doing enough, that we're letting our kids get away with things, or we are worried that they are looking at us thinking we're monster moms because we're being too strict, right?
Mhm.
So in that situation, I would always advise that you listen to yourself and to your child. Does this feel good? Like parenting, the 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 good parenting, this high standard, high support is going to feel good in the process. It's going to be effective because we want parenting that works. We got to get from A to B. We got to get our kids dressed and out of the door in the morning. We need to get them to bed. We need to feed them, right? Like, so it has to work. It
Mhm.
has to be workable
Effective. Mhm.
and sustainable, but it has to feel good in the process. So asking, do I feel good and proud of the way I'm handling this? Is it feeling good for them, for my child? And that will be the guiding star for you. So if it's strangers, just ask like, I'm feeling good and proud of myself. So who cares what they think?
Mhm.
Is this feeling good for my kid? Yeah, if it is. Now, if it's, if the answer is like, I'm not feeling very good and proud of the way I'm handling this, then you're like, I'm being either too permissive or too strict. And I
Right.
need to find that sweet spot again.
That's great advice. Sorry to leave you end on such a big and heavy question, but I think it's something that a lot of us have encountered or experienced. So I think that that is very, very, very
It's
helpful. I could talk to you and learn from you all day. This has been absolutely amazing. I'm so grateful for you to come on and share your experiences and your background because you're a wealth of knowledge. And I know that you work with a lot of kids and families. So if people want to learn more from you or about you, what's the best place to do that, Lorena?
Oh, they can find me on my website. It's lorenaseidel.com. And there is a free mini training. There's a quiz they can take to figure out which obstacle is their biggest obstacle. What's tripping them could be their mindset, right? Their state of mind. Maybe what's tripping parents the most is the lack of better strategies. They just have the strategies they remember from growing up. That's the
Hmm.
yelling, shaming, blaming, bribing, threatening, rewards, punishments, or maybe they are just letting kids get away with too much and putting things under the rug, enabling, overprotecting, fixing everything, doing too much for their kids so they can figure it out if strategy might be their obstacle. For some parents, it's the connection. It's that they're throwing good strategy, but on top of this connection, their kids are not going to listen to them until they can connect and the child kind of cracks open a little bit and you can get through them. So sometimes families need to heal the connection if they have a 10-year-old and there's little seeds of mistrust and miscommunication, perceived favoritism between siblings in place already. So they can figure it out like, do we need to heal connection or repair? Or how do we sustain? How do we create? And then the other obstacle is the lack of emotional intelligence skills. So this quiz is there for free, and then a mini training that they can watch. And if they want to work with me, I have a group that support parents and gives the entire framework and all the things for getting parents into the best state of mind they can be so they can use and access the best strategies. They can create this unshakable sense of connection with their kids, and then they can work together as a family to build the skills. And my Instagram too would probably be
Hmm.
a good place for them to find me. And it's Lorena with a underscore Seidel.
Amazing. And I will link all those things in the show notes so people can learn more about you or just kind of follow you along or work with you. Thank you so much,
Yes,
Lorena.
you're welcome. This was such a pleasure. Lovely. I could too talk to you all day. So maybe we will hang out and have some tea offline one of these days.